So there's a Spanish proverb that says that the only heart worth having is a broken heart. And that comes to my mind because the world right now is heartbreaking. You turn on the news and it's one heartbreaking thing after another. And sometimes it's soul crushing as well as heartbreaking. And so then it's helpful to know that the broken heart is the vessel that then can receive what in the Catholic Church was called the Holy Ghost, the Spirit, but also that can awaken to a greater consciousness of its own capacity to be centered and to be gifted and learn how to give those gifts. I'm just writing these old images because I think we have to return to them if we're to survive things, but especially if we're to imagine meaningful ways forward. So each soul was considered to have a treasure buried within it, and therefore each heart had to be broken in order for the inner gold to shine and come out. And so then that gives you the sense that the heart can be a place of great pain, as mentioned in the Rumi poem early on, as well as the place of our greatest coherence. Coherence is another attribute of the heart, that when our heart is always beating and when the rhythm of the heart is irregular, we are incoherent. When the rhythm comes into its natural form, it's called the coherence of the heart. And one of the problems with the world right now, the tragedies, the upsets, the fears, the anxiety permeating everywhere, but also the speed of life throw our hearts out of rhythm. And so one of the things, or one of the practices, is to find a way to bring the heart back into coherence, because it gives us a greater sense of center, but it also preserves the body, which is otherwise withered by the intensities of the world right now. So the broken heart was the way that the heart begins to open, but it also can be a characteristic of a time of life as living now in a broken-hearted world. So the core idea was the sense that we awaken to this inner sense of our heart having treasure, golden elements, gifts, qualities that don't just sustain us, they're intended to help the world, that everyone has those, and that the life itself will break us open in order that those things could become conscious and come out. This is, an old way of looking at it. And yet here's the problem. All of this stuff is trying to happen. We're here, our souls are here to transform. Our hearts are here to awaken. Our minds are here to recognize the movements of the heart and the growth of the soul. And yet, when we're faced with opportunities to change, old fears will awaken. The inner walls of the heart will tighten as the fearful little self restricts us from opening more fully because of pains and traumas that happened early on. So, in a sense, in order to really change, in order to transform, we have to let go of who we believe we are. And I mean in the sense that we believe our own story of how we were wounded and how we were traumatized, and that woundedness, rather than breaking our heart open, makes our heart close up tightly. Early in life, we couldn't protect ourselves. We were vulnerable in the extreme, and therefore we all get wounded, and that wound lives in the heart. Later in life, then they also say, then after we're wounded, the ego forms to protect us from ever feeling that sense of deep wounding and the verge of annihilation ever again. But later in life, what originally protected us, I mean the attitudes and the practices of the ego, become the thing that will shatter and limit our lives unless we learn to let go. So there's all this gold hidden within. That's the core of so many stories found around the world. There's the fact that life will break us down and break us open. And then there's the psychological fact that we have inner resistances against change when what we really need to do is change and transform if we are to grow, if we are even to sustain ourselves, if we are to find meaning and purpose and a path with heart.